Hi, everyone. Welcome to Time to Come Alive. My name is Valerie Hope. I am your coach. I'm also your host for this weekly program. I'm so excited because this program, for some of you already know, is an opportunity to become more conscious of oneself, an opportunity to connect with other people even more effectively, and then also just create. I think when we give ourselves that freedom to be more aware, more conscious, we're connecting with others, and great things can come out of it. And creativity is really one of those opportunities that we have to leave our stamp in the world. More than anything, to bring in someone to share this conversation with, and I've been doing this for a while, and our special guest today, I'll introduce her in just a moment, has been a part of the growth of this program over the last few months. I'm really excited that she's now on the other side of the experience. But before we go into that, a couple of things. One, this is being streamed on Facebook Live, so please feel free to share this on your page, on your social media, so that you have other people in your life with whom you can connect with and share this message. And also, if you're watching this recording, share with other people as well, because you'll have the opportunity to follow up with them and really go deep in the conversation, which I know is the intention of our guest today. Before we get into our conversation, I'd like for you all to just spend some time just getting very present to what we're going to be doing this morning. And to do that, I just ask you to feel your feet, feel your seat, and make sure that you feel supported by wherever you're standing or wherever you're sitting. It's helpful to just take a nice deep breath, nice cleansing breath. And as you do this, I like to prepare your listening. And this time is just focusing and awareness of where you are and what parts of your body might be doing at any given moment. And this one you might find familiar, but as you think and focus on these areas of your body, I want you to bring your awareness to it. I want you to bring whatever energy you sense coming from that part of your body to light. We'll start with our head. Just notice whatever's happening in your mind, maybe your physical, your face, your ears, your scalp. Notice all the energy that's buzzing there. I want you now to focus on your shoulders. Is there tension? Is there ease? What's the energy that you feel on your shoulders? If it makes sense, go ahead and relax them. If not, become alert. Now I want you to find your knees and what energy you're bringing to your knees. And finally, your toes. What energy are you feeling there? What are you sensing? Are they relaxed? Are they stressed? Are they tense? One last round. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Nice deep breath in. Exhale. And now refocus your gaze or open your eyes. And you're back here with us. That was our oldie but goodie, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, the mindful version. I know it seems a little cheesy, but I found that, just having some awareness of the energy that's flowing through our body at any different time and at any time is super helpful. And especially in light of the conversation we're about to have today, that there are areas of our life, there are areas of our childhood, there's areas of our growth and development that require a different focus and different time. And each time we focus on it, we notice something different. We grow or develop or evolve to a different level. And our guest this morning is Katherine Gonzales. I met Katherine, my goodness, probably 4 or 5 months ago now, through a mutual friend. And what struck me about her, she actually, the first time we interacted was on this program. She called in as a listener and made a comment about whatever our topic was. I don't even remember, Katherine, I don't even remember what we were talking about or what the subject was, but I remember as you were more and more involved in this program, you called in pretty much every week since then. And each time you would share some very revealing thoughts, ideas, opinions, experiences. And I'm like, who is this lady? Wow, she's all in. So first of all, I want to appreciate and acknowledge your participation and your commitment to coming alive by participating and supporting this program. But I'm curious, first of all, what had you call and participate in these sessions in the first place?
So initially I was invited by one of my best friends, Johanna, and I was drawn in immediately because I think that the topic, of course, coming alive in itself sounds it was intriguing to me. And so I liked that you incorporated life situations, how you can incorporate it into your work and in addition to your personal life. And so immediately after the first session, I was very excited to learn and to hear more and to hear others share their life experiences as well.
So cool. And I really appreciated how every single session, it was like it's like you dropped another truth bomb or something. And that was exciting because I do feel that over the time that you've been participating, you've brought your own life to light, right? By sharing. So first of all, I want to ask so that you can share with everyone that's listening and participating today, what did you want to get out by actually being featured, being the guest? What did you want to get out of this experience?
So when you initially asked me, I felt a little apprehensive because one of the things that I consistently work on is being vulnerable. That's always been a struggle for me. But I think as time has gone on, it's important for me to share my story so that if it helps even just one person, then I feel like I fulfilled my purpose. I'm extremely spiritual. And so for me, I've always prayed about my purpose and what his purpose is for me in his life. And so I felt like these days with the topic that we were going to discuss, which is family, mine by far is not your quote unquote norm. And so understanding too that everybody's normal that's a matter of perception. So I just felt that it was important to share and touch somebody if possible.
Yay. And I'm glad you said that about the normal, right? So what I recently discovered, I shouldn't say discovered, but I was able to kind of tie together that when we use judgment, like in some cases we say what's normal, what isn't normal, for example. Whenever we use any sort of judgment, that judgment is a form of hatred. You know, I know this sounds a little bit different, but I would like for you all to consider that when we have judgment against something, that means that there's something that we reject. There's something that we don't agree with, that we somehow make wrong. It shouldn't be that way. And it requires some form of hatred or some sort of wanting to distance oneself from whatever that thing that we judge is. But I do think that part of being conscious and coming alive is actually by not appreciating necessarily like gratitude always, but being able to see like, well, this is what it is, and this is a purpose, and this is the impact. Right? And one of the things I was really taken by in your sharing with me your family dynamic is how you've been over the years been much more mindful or conscious about, hey, this is what my family is, and this is how I grew up, and this has been the impact. So share with us, what has been your journey in your family? And you can start from as far back as you like, and we'll dig in there. We can peel back.
Oh gosh. So I was born in San Antonio, Texas. And at the time, my mom, already our family dynamic was unique. My mom had a daughter previously to me, so I had a sister, but my mom was teenage pregnancy. So she had left out of town. Her mother passed when she was 3 years old. And so she never had necessarily a mother, a positive, I should say, mother figure for quite a while. My grandfather had 3 deceased wives at this point. So when I was born, my mom had given my sister up to my grandparents for adoption. She was 19 years old. So when I was born, my mother and biological father separated when I was about 2 years old. And at that point, I no longer saw him. And so she met my, I hate to use the word step and half, but for descriptive purposes, I will share that she met my stepfather. And so he raised me since I was approximately about 5 when they got married. And quickly they moved me to South Texas, what we call the Valley. And my brothers were born when I was about 6 or 7. So coming into the family, my mom had a daughter previously to me, and then my stepfather had he had 2 daughters as well. And so they wanted boys. And so they started trying for boys, and then that's where my brothers were born. So for so long, I grew up around the Gonzales side, my stepfather's side of the family. And I would have my grandmother say things to me, his mom say things to me like, "You're not a Gonzales." And I never knew what that meant, because somehow they were able to start me school as I was born. A lot of people don't know this, but I was born Margaret Katherine de la Cruz. So, but they started me in school as Kathy or Katherine Gonzales. So as time went on, I started exploring that, or started noticing and becoming aware that I didn't look like anyone else in my family. My mom's side is very light complected. They have Spanish blood in them, so they're very colored eyes, light hair, and my sister has blue eyes, very light skinned as well. And so my brothers are tall. I'm fun size, and so I started just asking more questions. And I would ask my mom, like, "Why does Grandma say that I'm not a Gonzales? I don't understand what that means." And as a child, it was very confusing for me. And so I started realizing as I got older, and essentially when I became pregnant with my own child, that I was missing a huge part of my life. Like, they ask you questions about your family, your medical history. And so I was missing these pieces of my life. And so I started questioning my mom. And initially, I had no desire to know my biological father, because I felt that he wasn't active in my life. I hadn't heard from him for several years. When I finally became aware, I guess when I was about 15, I was about to have a quinceañera. My mom decided to kind of give me a little bit of clarity and inform me that my stepfather wanted to adopt me and officially give me his name. So I went through some struggles with that, because my biological father's family started reaching out to me and kind of, I guess, wanted to see me before I made that decision to be adopted. And I was very, I'm not going to lie, I was very hateful, resentful towards him, towards his family. I remember meeting with them and saying, "So long you don't talk about him, I will have this conversation with you. But the minute you show me a picture of him or you bring up his name, I will ask my mother to pick me up." And so now as an adult, I've realized that, as I say, there's 3 sides to every story, right? Your side, her side, and the truth. But I think that it was very instrumental in the growth of understanding family dynamics. And so because of that, I always felt like I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have kids, because I don't want to deal with all these different dynamics of exes and drama. And so it just, it gave me a perception of my family was, I guess at the time, I didn't realize the dysfunction of it per se. But as I've gotten, like I said, as I've grown and gone through my own experiences, I realized that nothing is perfect. And so I had to let that go for myself and realize that on the surface, things may appear to be a certain way, because in our household, it was very important. I grew up with a military father who was very stern and very, he felt like what happens in our house stays in our house. And then I grew up Catholic, and so my mom had she had her own struggles with trying to figure out and paint this picture perfect family. So we were in church every Sunday, we were in Catholic church, we made all our sacraments, so to the outside world, our family did look perfect, but no one knew what was going on the inside and behind closed doors. And so I remember making these long drives from South Texas to San Antonio to pick up my sisters, which technically they're my stepsisters, but, and their mom would say, oh, they're not here. And back then, men didn't have the rights. In my opinion, they still don't fully have those rights, but they didn't have the rights that they have today. And my father didn't want to put my sisters through calling the police and doing all these different things. And so I also longed for my sister on my mom's side, because she grew up with my grandparents. And so I always had this need for approval as well, because I was the oldest at home, but the baby sister amongst my blended family. And so I always had a need for a female relationship.
Man, Katherine, when you when you want to share, you share deeply. I so appreciate you being so transparent about all of those multicolored layers of your life. Thing that really struck me, because my grandfather used to say the same thing, right? There's the my truth, your truth, and then the truth, right? He said there's three sides to it. I'm curious about, now that looking back, what at the time, before you really knew what was really the challenges or the issues in your family, what did you think was the truth then? And I'd just like for you to kind of walk us through each time you discovered a different level or different layer, different side to the truth, and what that was like for you.
Oh gosh.
Like thinking that, when did you find out? Go ahead.
And when did I find out that my father wasn't actually my father?
Yes. What age?
Gosh, it must have been about, officially I was a teenager, but along the way, you know how you hear these family secrets of, oh, well, he's not your father. I would hear adults talking. So unofficially, I would say about six-ish.
Wow. Okay. So at that point in time, what do you remember was truth for you?
To me, my truth prior to that was that Jimmy Gonzales and Josephine were my parents, and that Eric and Jay, or we call him Jay, but Eric and Jimmy as well, were my brothers. I don't even quite honestly remember how they explained to me that Julie was my sister when she grew up with my grandparents. But to me, in our household, that's what my truth was.
Okay. And Julie was the first child?
Yes, Julie was the first child my mother had.
Okay,
from
got
a previous relationship.
And then you also said that you started to notice at some point that you just didn't look like everyone else in your family. Was that around the same age, or at what age did you start noticing that? How did you feel about it?
Well, I had, quite honestly, I developed a complex about my skin tone, and my friends will tell you that, in my opinion, I'm dark. But because I grew up, again, South Texas by the beach, by South Padre Island, and so I remember us being there. That was a weekend thing for us. So that's why I love being outdoors. But my family, when my sister, Julie, would come visit, my cousins, my aunt, my mom. They would all be under these umbrellas with a bunch of sunscreen and baseball caps and covered, because they would turn beet red when they would burn, and I would tan. And so I would be running around in the beach, and I'd tell my sister, well, come join me. And, my cousins, and they would be like, well, we have to be a little more careful. And I remember one of my aunts telling my mom, would you quit letting her be out in the sun so long? She's getting really dark. And so I didn't know what that meant as a child, but as I started getting older, it gave me a complex, because I'm like, well, Mom, why don't I have your skin color? Why don't I have my sister's skin color? Why don't I have my cousins and aunts? And all the women, for some reason, excuse me, seem to have colored eyes and, like I said, very light skin. So I started asking Mom, like, well, I don't look like anyone else, but ironically, people tell me that I look like Jimmy, the man who raised me, because he's darker complected. So I at first would just assume that, well, I got it from my dad. But he's taller, my brothers are taller, and so I started realizing that too, that, again, I wasn't the same, I was fun size, and so I just started questioning things. And then his daughters from his previous marriage had very curly hair. And so, again, it was an identity thing. I wanted curly hair like they did. And I remember my mom taking me in for a perm one day, and I looked like a poodle. I mean, it was like literally a thing.
Oh, what the 80s did to all of us.
Exactly. I'm surprised I still have hair.
Wow. Okay, so through all this time, right, you're growing up and you're starting to realize that there's something that doesn't just quite fit in the dynamic and in your appearance and the things that you heard adults maybe whispering about, right? You kind of got this sense that there was something behind all that. And at what point did you decide that you needed to get behind, like you needed to understand all of that and know what the truth was?
When I got pregnant, they started asking me about my medical history and my background. I think when you're carrying a child and you start thinking about, gosh, I'm bringing this person into this world that I'm missing, like a huge link, like there's a missing link. And I felt like it wasn't a jab at the man who raised me, because I appreciated that. But for me, it was finding myself and finding the missing link. And so I started asking my mom more questions, and she wasn't very receptive to it at first, or at all, quite honestly. She felt like it was a disrespect to the man who had raised me. And so she said, why do you want to know at this point? And I was already, my mom passed in 2005. So actually the conversation had taken place 2 weeks before she passed. So that was 14 years ago. And I remember we had a very big disagreement about it, because all I knew at this point, when you get adopted, basically they seal your birth certificate, and it's when you get adopted, it supersedes your birth certificate. So at this point now, I didn't really have a whole lot of information other than his name. And so I just wanted to know, like, his date of birth, give me some more information. And she didn't honestly want me to know. She felt like, that's in the past, that doesn't matter. He didn't want you. Why do you care at this point? You're going to break your father's heart. And as I mentioned, like, I've never referred to my brothers or my sisters or anyone as halves or steps, or to me, they're my brothers and sisters, and he was my dad. So I had a lot of guilt associated with it. And then 2 weeks later, she passed, and so I stopped looking. And in talking to friends, and again, having my own experiences and relationships, I felt like it was important to me. And I had a long talk with my brother, with my siblings, and I felt like I didn't want to live my life with questions and what if. And I think in hindsight, I I think my mom would appreciate. She knew that about me, that I was very curious since I was a child. So I think that I felt that it was important to finally get some answers. And so I have really good friends who helped me start looking for him, and we did our little investigative work. And it's amazing, quite honestly, it's scary how much you can find out about people on the internet. But we started looking, and so all I had was his name and an approximate date of birth. I knew he was around her age, and luckily his name isn't very common. So I started looking, and a couple of my friends helped me look as well. And right around the time that my aunt passed away, which was, I want to say 4 years ago now, I was in San Antonio for her funeral, and in talking amongst my cousins, my cousin is older than I am, she started talking to me about my biological father. And she said, I'm not disrespecting your mother. I think she loved you, and I think she wanted to protect you, but your biological father is not, from what I remember of him, he was a kind man, he was nurturing. And so I think it's worth exploring. And so I talked to her son, some of my other cousins, and they kind of convinced me. And we decided one day to just get in the car because I had an address. I had a phone number, but the phone numbers didn't work. I had an address, and ironically, the address is about 4 to 5 miles from where my home was in San Antonio.
Wow.
So we made a drive.
A Lifetime movie right now that we're talking about. This stuff is for real. Wow. Okay. So he lived 5 miles away from where you grew up.
Yes. Well, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, and from where I lived before I moved to Dallas. And so my cousins cheered me on. We went, and I was not prepared, quite honestly. It was one of those things that I thought I had been waiting for my whole life, but I felt, oh, he's not going to answer the door, or maybe he won't be there, or maybe it's not even him. So when we drove up, there was someone moving out, and the house was vacant. And I thought, wow, after all these years and he's gone. But my cousin's like, it's the next house, ding dong. So, and he had a Texas Longhorns painted on his curb. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's him. And so I was cracking jokes. As you can see, I crack jokes when I'm nervous or.
It's a great coping mechanism for many people. Yes.
So I knocked on the door, and 4 people, a lady, two small children, and a man opened the door. And when he opened it, this was the other thing. I wore glasses, and nobody else in my family wore glasses. So he opened the door, and he had on glasses. He was fun size. He was, and immediately I remember thinking in my mind, this is him, like before even asking anything. And so I asked, is this the De La Cruz residence? And they all said yes simultaneously. And essentially he closed the door behind him, and he came outside, and he said, I know who you are. And it was just, it was quite an experience.
Well, I can just imagine. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but I can it's kind of interesting, the fact that all of this happened not too long ago, right? This was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so just 3 years ago now. All of this lifetime that you've had, peeling back and uncovering all these moments of truth with your family, and the things that your mother and others maybe worked so hard to protect and shield you from. And what I hear is just each layer that you peeled back gave you a little bit more courage, and your ability to look a little longer, to go a little deeper, and all the way to actually going to the house. And I don't think it's any coincidence that everybody showed up at the door. I mean, this was a moment. There needed to be a moment. And I'm just so, it's kind of moving to see how you have, through all of those years, And all of those doubts and all of those insecurities or ideas or all the things that you kind of had to go through to actually just keep moving forward. And that's what I admire so much. And that's one of the reasons that I was like, yeah, we need to talk about this, because it just showed your perseverance. And you could have just buried your head in the sand. I think you had enough conditioning around you of what that looked like, and that you would have just survived life somehow. But I can see that you weren't about surviving. You're really about thriving. And every single encounter that you put yourself in was an opportunity to, okay, let's see what's there for me here. So, okay, so we're at your dad's house, we're on the porch, he comes out. What were you feeling at the time, and what happened in that interaction?
I was nervous. I was scared. I think that I had so many questions for him. And of course, I wasn't prepared for him to answer the door. And he was very respectful of the fact that he said, he got very emotional, and he goes, he said, initially his first words were, I said, look, I am not here to disrupt anything. I don't know your family situation. Because he asked me, how's your mom? And I said, she's deceased. And he said, how's your aunt? The one, or how's your aunt? Because that's how my parents, my biological parents met. And I said, actually, that's why I'm here. She just had her funeral. And so he said, well, I told him, I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I just have questions primarily about my family dynamics, about you, about like my grandmother. And so ironically, my grandmother had deceased. He's the last of the siblings surviving. And he said, I will talk to you and answer questions. However, do not ask me things regarding your mother and my relationship, because that's between her and I. And she's not here to defend herself. And so I said, fair enough. And quite frankly, those were some things that were going through my mind. I wanted to know, do I have other siblings? As if I don't have enough, but but do I have any living grandparents? Do I have, I just wanted, there were so many things, so many questions that I had going through my mind, and I didn't have time to necessarily prepare because it was just a last minute thing. And so he informed me that I have two older brothers, which I had an idea that I did. And I have two younger brothers. And so I'm his only girl, biological daughter. He raised one of his wives' daughters. So I gained another sister, in my opinion. And so he basically filled me in on those type of family dynamics. I asked him some health questions too. I can be a little technical as well. So I wanted to know my diabetes, high blood pressure, all these different things. And so it was emotional. He got, at one point, he felt that he made the comment that he said, they took you away from me and I couldn't find you anymore. He let me know that my aunt would take me over there when I was baby. And so I could spend some time with him when my mom was at work. So I'm sure she would appreciate that very much. But and my aunt always did, she would try to talk to me about him. I just wasn't ready. And I think as children, people don't realize when they're talking that you're paying attention. And so I had quite a bit of questions for him. But I also, in that, found out that his present wife does not know about me. And she doesn't even know that I exist. And that was a tough pill to swallow, because now I understand why my mom maybe tried to shield me from that pain, because we don't really, he's still not in my life. We still don't have a relationship. And I told him, he did receive, I had written him a letter when I initially found his address. So he had my letter. And I told him, at this point, the ball is in your court. He made the comment he thought that I would, when he received the adoption papers, I guess you have to sign off when you're giving up your legal rights. And my mother had written him a letter when I was like 14 or 15 and said that I had a great life and that he needed to just sign over his rights. And he figured that when I was ready, I would come find him. And he said, I always thought that you'd come. And I said, but you're the parent. I wasn't the parent. I was a child. And now I'm an adult, but I wasn't an adult back then. And so, yeah, that was.
So, Katherine, now, what do you do with those? When you think family, and you said something really interesting that you say you don't like using the term step and half and all of that, right? Why? First of all, why is that for you? What is it about those terms, and what do they mean for you?
I think that through this whole experience, I've learned that blood doesn't make you family. In my opinion, like, to me, there's no sense in saying, we don't say like, this is my friend's friend, or this is my, we incorporate relationships. And so I think that I'm a firm believer in what we think about, we bring about. So if you speak those things like step and half and into existence, I mean, to me, they're all my brothers and sisters. All of these people that I have named, which it's quite a bit, but I think that I have also learned that some of my friends are, to me, my family. They've become my family. They know more about me than some of my family members. And so I don't, and I think it was T.D. Jakes that it was, I can't remember who mentioned it, that said that's so much of the common mistakes we made in our family dynamics is that we have to be accepting of all of the children in the family, whether they're your step or half, or what does that matter? Once you become my family and we become one union, and especially when you get married, you're taking all that on. And so I've been all those things that we've talked about. I've been the stepdaughter, the stepchild, the half sister, but my brothers and sisters love me as if we had the exact same blood running through our veins. So I don't think that, I don't like those words. To me, it's just, to me, you're my family and that's it. Like, I don't need to
the title and
I think it's right.
Got it. And in just a moment, I'm going to open up the line so those who are participating can ask questions or share what you're getting from this conversation with Katherine. Is just so enlightening, our fun-sized moment here. Y'all are thinking about what to say or what to ask. And I'll ask you to introduce yourself by sharing your name and where you're connecting from, as well as what your comment or question is in just a moment. As you're thinking about that, Katherine, one last question for you. What would you say love is now, right? Because you just explained that family for you does not have the construct of a name or this blood relationship. Is really who you bring into your circle, right? Your inner circle. So when you think about what love is for you, how would you define it today?
Oh, gosh.
I know it's deep. I have deep questions, Katherine. What can I say?
Hey, you didn't prepare me for that. For love for me it's definitely not perfect. I had to remove that from my vocabulary a long time ago. I think love is accepting and kind and understanding, for sure, because of course anyone who comes into my circle has to take all of this that goes with it. So I think love is definitely patient. It sounds so cliche, but it is. It's patient. It's for me, transparency is a huge part of love for me, because I've had it. I find that if I'm around people, that I surround myself with people that are transparent, and I've learned so much, even from your sessions, of learning how to be vulnerable and share. And I no longer have to be that little girl that has all these secrets and things that have happened. I have a voice. And so love is, I hate to say unconditional, because sometimes love does come with certain conditions, but it's not. I think that's more about loving yourself as well, and knowing I know now, like, what I deserve. And I think for so long, I felt like I had to take scraps of what was thrown my way because I didn't have a full-fledged understanding of what love did look like. It can be confusing. It's not necessarily perfect, but acceptance maybe as well. But I think accepting yourself also and loving who you are.
I said that was the last time I brought other people in, but that's not true. I do have something that just came up. I feel compelled to ask you, what would you like for your mother to know now? You know, she's passed away now several years ago, but what would you like for her to know today about your life?
Oh, wow. I'd like her to know that me going and looking for my biological father had nothing to do with her. I think that she did the best with what she had. She loved me the way she knew how to love, and that that I'm happy that now that I know all the missing pieces, I don't love her any less. I know now that being an adult and adulting is not easy. And I love that I would want her, I appreciate that she instilled spirituality in me, and she instilled the value of family. Because at the end of the day, even though we had a not perfect household, she always tried to bring us all together. So I'm blessed with knowing cousins and second cousins and up to like fifth cousins. And she did make a change. And I think that's what she always tried to do is have a different childhood for us than what she had. And so I thank her. I thank her for that. And gosh, she instilled so many things. And so I'd want her to know that I'm still trying to carry that on. This weekend we're all getting together to go camping. And so I want her to know that I'm going to continue to try to keep her memory alive through her kids, her grandkids and great grandkids and my million nieces and nephews. So
Love that. Love that. And this is, yeah, I can hear the freedom. You know, it's interesting because, well, at least here in the US, right, it's the 4th of July week and we celebrate freedom as a country, but I can also hear in your story and what you would like to share with your mother that now you experience a freedom of you have a personal freedom to share, right? And freedom to love, right? Freedom to love without the hiding, like you said, or all the cloak and dagger that happen in order to protect, that you're able to cast a lot of that off. So, wow, fabulous. All right, so I'm going to stop. Oh, this is great. What comments or questions? I want to tune into the rest of the audience here. What are you guys getting from this conversation with Katherine? And I'm not afraid to call on people. So, if you're hard to say something or ask a question, I would just ask you to unmute yourself. You can hit *6 if you're on the phone, or if you want to raise your hand by hitting *9, or in the Zoom program, you can do a little hand. Please go ahead and do so that we can bring you into this conversation. I'm going to ask someone. I see someone that shares your name, Katherine. I don't know what the relationship is, but I'm really curious. Nicole, there's a Nicole on the line. Is this someone you know?
She's a friend of mine, but we're not. I always call her my cousin, but we're not.
Okay, so cousin related. Nicole, and you can put it on the chat, or you could say it out loud. But cousin Nicole here, what are you getting from this conversation with Katherine?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yes.
Hi, Kat.
Hi, Nicole.
I really, it was eye-opening to hear you share so much about your story. I didn't know all of those things. And my family on my dad's side is very blended as well. And they share the same, I guess, the same concept as you do, as far as like they don't use stepbrother, stepsister. Those are his sisters and his brothers, and they're my aunts. And, we too share that same vision in how we are with each other. Even though there's, my grandmother had 7 children, there's 3 dads. We're all family, and the bond that we share with each other. I mean, my grandmother, she passed away when I was 9, and we were all still very young when we share such a tight bond when we sit around together and have those talks about, when my grandmother was here and how things might be different if she still was. And, family is just so important. And having that bond and, through thick and thin, I mean, my family has been there for me. So I think it's just so awesome to hear how you and your siblings are with each other and how close you are, and, just to emphasize on how truly important family is.
I love that. Thank you so much, Nicole. And I'm curious, how long have you guys been friends? You mentioned that you didn't know any of this.
Gosh, we probably met, I want to say, I don't know, 4 years maybe, Kat, 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I know it was after I went through some life-changing events, is when I met Kat. So yeah, it's probably been about 3 or 4 years.
4 years. Wow. And Kat, if I may. I feel like I'm on the inside now, so I gotta say, Kat, what is it like to hear your friend Nicole say this, and what she's getting from you opening up? Because I know you mentioned in the beginning one of the things that you wanted to do was help other people by sharing your story. So what are you getting from her?
I'm glad that it's something that she could relate to as well. I didn't realize the dynamics either, that there were, as I mentioned, like blended. She came from a blended family as well, so that's interesting. Thank you for sharing, Nicole.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, and I think this is part of what happens, right? When we start to share, to really expose ourselves. Expose ourselves doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean. Reveal, that's the word. To reveal these parts of ourselves, we actually give other people permission to reveal as well. Now, Katherine, you and I talked a lot about vulnerability before, and that's what it creates. Right? You create a space and environment in which other people feel comfortable, or at least feel the courage to reveal as well. I see a comment here in our live stream. They talk about Tim. Tim says, not only do you not need to have secrets, you also do not need to have all the answers. What would you say to that, Katherine? Kat?
So they said we don't need to have secrets.
Yeah, you not only do you not need to have secrets, you also do not need to have all the answers.
Oh, wow. I think that, yeah, I guess there are some things. That one's a tough one for me because I always feel like I do, but that's just my personality. Like I want to know the answers. I don't like the unknowns, but like in the situation of finding my biological father, I felt like it was nice to meet him, but it was also a tough pill to swallow to find out the truth. And I guess that's a good example as well, that when I met with him, there are things that that I still don't necessarily need to know. I think that for the most part, I wasn't worried about, well, why did you guys divorce? Why did you? So maybe I didn't need those answers as well. I found enough of what I needed to know to make me feel like, okay, now I have that part of my life. I have the answer that I needed, in the sense of, again, it was two people that obviously loved each other at one point, and it didn't work out. And so my path went a different way, and that's fine as well.
Mm. And you mentioned that part of the impetus, right, the motivation to go after this information was because you were about to have a child yourself, and you wanted to make sure that you had all the information. So how did that influence afterwards? How did that, getting the information or uncovering all those things, how did that influence your own idea of motherhood?
Well, essentially, I didn't end up, I think I've shared that I'm not a mom, but I think finding or uncovering that truth made me realize more from a relationship perspective, is that there's no perfect relationship, and that I'll never know, in the sense of how my biological parents interacted, or, those type of things. But because of their relationship, I came into this world. And so I'm still trying to, of course, figure out that purpose of why I'm here. But it uncovered that nothing, I think for me, that's when I let go of the facade that I need to have a biological child, and I need to have a perfect marriage, and I need to have a perfect relationship. And so that made me realize that maybe my purpose is to have children that aren't necessarily my blood, or that I give birth to, that there's other ways to become a parent. I'm very active in my nieces and nephews' lives, and some of those I help. I'm more hands-on with my nieces and nephews, and so maybe that's why I didn't have my own biological children. So I think it opened up a lot of things for me, finding him. Did it hurt? Does it still hurt that we don't have a relationship to this day? Yeah, but I don't, it's like I'm at peace with it now. The chains are broken, and you know what? I tried, and I can keep moving forward through that. I earned another sister. My next journey is to still find my biological brothers, but if that doesn't happen, I'm okay with that as well, because I know that I've done my part, and I've got enough. I have a lot of love around me, through my friends, through my family, through my nieces, through my nephews. And so again, like, I've learned that nothing is perfect, but it's life's what you make of it, and your relationships are what you make of it. So I'm going to value the ones that I do have.
I love that. I'm curious, what would you say to your biological father and these biological siblings that you've not made a connection with yet? What would you say to them today? What do you want them to know?
Gosh. There's certain things that I wonder, okay, well, where did that come from? It's nurture nature, right? So I think that I'm always curious about certain things that I do, or certain niche, like, is that where I got it from? From my biological brothers, I would just love to meet them, just to see how their family is, and let them know that what happened between our biological father and our mothers has nothing to do with us. That I would love to just meet them, just to know that I'm pretty fun to be around. I think that they would. I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. You're so right. You are fun to be around. Not only are you size, you're fun spirit.
So I think that, and with my biological father, like, I would have loved to sit down and have a meal with him, just have a full-fledged conversation outside of all the lies and secrets. But I accept that he has another life, and that I'm just not a part of that, and that's okay. He did his part. He brought me here.
So true.
So,
the arc of your life too, Catherine, what I think it shows, at least it reveals to me, is that it's never too late. Now, I don't know what the future holds. I'm not predicting anything. I'm certainly not psychic, so I can't imagine what could happen. I think everything is possible. And I think through what you're sharing right now with us and how our world is so interconnected today, that is likely that someone that's listening or someone who will listen will, oh my gosh, that's her, right? Or now here's an opportunity for them to hear a part of the story that perhaps they were not aware of. So I don't want to leave that for granted, but I think what you've shown through all these different ups and downs in your life that maybe from the outside looking in might seem maybe chaotic, right? But you really shown that it's never too late. It's never too late to reveal. It's never too late to reach out. It's never too late to connect. And yeah, so who knows? And I love the fact that even after your mother passed, you've continued to search. Even after your aunt, you've continued. So I don't know what would you say today, just where you are today, what does the future holds for you? What do you see for yourself?
gosh, I see hope for sure. I see, I've been so blessed throughout this process, and I think that God brings people into your life for, again, cliche, but for various reasons. And He brought you into my life. He's brought some wonderful people into my life. I do see my happy ending, my idea of happy ending with getting married and having a family, even if that means not having my own biological child. I've adopted, quote unquote, so many already. And so I see just a life with no regrets. And when I leave this world, I just want to be remembered that way, that I didn't live my life with what ifs. And so I see, I will have that, the marriage, the family, whatever that looks like. And I look forward to it.
So do I. Can't wait for part 2. Well, I'm curious. So at the end of it all, and I remember when you and I first started our conversations and you started participating, that whole idea of sharing yourself and being vulnerable was something that was really uncomfortable. This is probably the most that you've shared, especially on such a social, open platform. How are you feeling now?
I feel that I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad that to share this, and again, if I can just help one person and share my testimony and know that life is, that's what makes it exciting, right? All these different, we don't fit into one box. We're all different, and everyone's idea of happiness is different. And I'm glad that that the people that know me and don't know me, I hope that they hear something from this and that it touches them. And that I think these days there's so many blended families. I really can't think of many that aren't. There's very few people that it's just so common. And so I think that love all your kids the same. Love all your, whatever that looks like for you, your family dynamic. And all these kids are so impressionable. So it's important for them and for their inner self to know that they're important too. And we all count. Like, God loves every single one of us the same. God doesn't know steps and halves and all these other things. And so I think that hopefully I touched someone's heart and that I was relatable.
Awesome. Well, let's just find out. So either on our live stream or those of you here on Zoom, if you were touched, moved, inspired, energized, any of that because of what you heard in this conversation, please make a comment. Right? Share a like, a heart emoji, write what you got from the conversation, because I think I so appreciate you, Katherine. I appreciate your sharing yourself so openly, so generously with us. I appreciate your honesty and transparency and showing that, yeah, life is not perfect and our family constructs can be messy and they can be loving, right? They just, you built so much love and acceptance every single iteration of yourself as you've gotten to this point in your life. And I can't imagine that there's so much more to go, so much more to go. And the wake, right? The things that you leave in your wake as you continue to build love in your family, in your friendships, and your, all these relationships that you're creating. And I'm so excited for what's to come because of it and what you started here. And I would imagine that there's some people who may have some truth to set to set free. Actually, I will lay down the challenge, especially here this week of freedom that we celebrate is not just freedom about this national identities. I think freedom of your own identity. Who are you? And what are you here to bring? And what have you been holding back that is not allowing you to thrive? And I think you set a great example for us today, Katherine. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me share.
Phenomenal. And next week, we're going to continue the conversation about vulnerability. We have a friend and client of mine, Amber Hill, who will be sharing her own journey of vulnerability, especially in the workplace, and how that's shown up for her. I know you and I have had some conversations around that. When you work for a large corporation, what is that like and how does it show up? But I do feel that coming alive is about bringing life to everywhere you go, not just your personal life, not just certain relationships. Everywhere you show up, your life is a testament to who you are. And so Amber is going to be sharing with us next week. So please join us at 8:45 Central, 9:45 Eastern Time next Tuesday. So looking forward to that. Katherine, once again, thank you so much. Thank you for anybody that joined us live. Nicole, thanks for your comments as well. And looking forward to seeing how this conversation has impacted you by your comments. All right, have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody. Bye.